of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to the May 18th, 2017 meeting of the Shawnee County Board of Commissioners. My name is Bob Archer. I currently serve as chair of the commission and represent District 3 alongside Commissioner Shelley Bueller, who represents District 1, and Commissioner Kevin Cook, who represents District 2. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
First item of business, please.
Proclamations, presentations. Number 1, recognition of Corrections Specialist Timothy Anderson. Brian Cole, Director of Corrections.
Good morning, Commissioners. Brian Cole, Shawnee County Department of Corrections. I'm here today with mixed emotion. As a director, on April 15th, I got one of the worst calls that I could get, was that one of our officers was viciously attacked by an inmate with a homemade knife. This is one of the worst things that can happen in our field, just to remind us how dangerous this field can be. But one of the things that we found out during that day, our officer is doing well, as good as expected at that time, was we had an officer who was working the module at that time, Officer Timothy Anderson, who recognized quickly what was happening, ran to the aid of this officer, got between the officer and the inmate, and shielded this officer from being harmed any further. One of the biggest acts of courage that we have in our agency, I can count on one hand how many times an officer has been actually really attacked or hurt in our career, which goes to a lot to say for our classification system and the staff and the work that they do. But we do understand the seriousness of what we do each day, and I certainly understand and know that Officer Timothy Anderson understands that. This guy left his post to render aid to another officer. And, you know, when you talk about law enforcement, you talk about corrections, it is family. You work with our officers each and every day, sometimes ordered, working 16 hours, maybe multiple days in a row. You're tired, you get burnout. And like I say, I don't know that anybody goes to college or grows up and says, I want to work in a jail when they grow up. Officer Anderson has taken his position very seriously. He represents everything that we do in law enforcement and corrections. We recognized Officer Anderson amongst his peers at the Department of Corrections with a Certificate of Achievement, and he received our challenge coin, which is the highest honor you can receive at the jail. I thought it was very important to bring Officer Anderson in front of the public to let you know that this guy wakes up every day to put his life on the line, and that's what he did this day. This isn't about me. This is something much bigger than the Department of Corrections. This is a man that put his life on the line. I'm very proud and very honored that he's on our side. I'm very honored, and he makes me happy because it's staff like him is where I'm at today. I'm very humbled. I'm very proud of the example he sets every day. So I ask everybody to please join me and stand and say congratulations to this young man. Thank you. I asked him if he wanted to say anything. He said no. He's been very humble. And he took this, and he's, you know, he was ordered, and he's been dealing with work early this morning with people being relocated. With that, Commissioners, any questions you may have? Or?
I'm going to shake his hand.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You can come up here.
Yes.
We don't.
I met you earlier. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. With that, thank you so much. Thank you.
I told the officer earlier that we were all proud. Next item of business, please.
Unfinished business. Number 1, consideration and a decision by the board in appeal of a sewer variance denial filed by the White Family Trust.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jonathan Brazan, Assistant County Counselor. As you recall, back on April 24th, the board heard testimony and received evidence in the sewer variance request. And this case really involves what we call the 200-foot rule. Out in the county, if you're within 200 feet of a sewer system, you're required to hook up. And what the regulation, our regulation actually says, is you're required to hook up unless there is a physical barrier or local regulation which prevents connection to the public sewer. So our office was tasked with making a recommendation on this issue. We looked into it. We actually met with the city planning director, Mr. Fyander, back on May 5th, and he explained to us that under the city's regulations, this property would not be allowed to hook up to the city sewer system. It doesn't meet any of the exceptions that they have in their rules. So based upon that, we believe that local regulation exists which prevents connection, and therefore we'd recommend the variance be granted. Mr. Warner, Dan Warner from the city is here, Barry Beagle's here, and Ed Kalis with the health agency, or health department. You have to answer any questions.
Questions or comments?
Question.
Commissioner Bueller.
You said that they do not allow to hook up to the sewer. It's an interceptor line that's running.
It's actually a collector line, and the
collector
city calls that a transmission line. One of their exceptions is if the property, the parcel was created before 2007 and it joins a sewer line, not a transmission line, then they allow you to connect, but they consider this a transmission line, so it doesn't meet that exception.
Okay, I wanted to make sure we
Yep.
got that information in there. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Cook.
Can you walk through us how we've got to this point that we're now considering this, but it's the city who's telling the county what they can or cannot do?
Back in 1994, the county and the city entered into an agreement to build the Half-Day Creek interceptor system, and basically the way it worked was the city built it, the county took out the loan with KDHE to pay for it in order to get people off of septic systems, because there was a big concern about septic systems out in the county failing. So it's the city system. The county paid for it through connection fees that we charge, the $4,000 an acre that you heard referred to back during the previous meeting. That is to pay back the loan that paid for it. But it's the city system. The city decides who connects to it under their rules. The city maintains it. They collect the monthly fees for people that use it. So that's how it worked.
And so when we say the city, do we mean the city or do we mean city planning?
The city.
Okay.
The city of Topeka's ordinances control who connects to that sewer.
But who oversees that? Is it the city planning department or?
I think that they make the recommendations to the city council, but it's actually in a city ordinance of the qualifications to connect to that.
And what impact does this have that it falls within the municipal services boundary around?
It's actually within the 3-mile area that the city has subdivision authority. So one of the ways that you can connect to the sewer is if you're a platted subdivision that has either been annexed into the city or consented to annex into the city. And under the cities, I'll let Mr. Warner speak to this if you have any more detailed questions, but my understanding is the city's land use growth management plan doesn't foresee or doesn't allow for any new subdivisions in this area.
Okay. And so, and again, before we, and not to, Commissioner, if I can just briefly,
Of course.
not to get us off into a rabbit hole or, down to off track, but many years ago, there was a joint city-county planning department, correct?
Mm-hmm. Till about 2003 or 2004, I think, is when it separated.
And part of that separation was over disagreements between city planning recommendations and county planning recommendations. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And ultimately, we wound up having 2 planning departments.
That's correct.
But within this municipal services boundary, the ultimate authority doesn't rest with the county, it rests with...
For subdivision
For
approval.
subdivisions.
Yep, within the 3-mile ETJ, extraterritorial jurisdiction.
And do we have any guidance as to how the county can have influence in that boundary?
Yeah, we actually litigated this issue a couple of times, and basically what the courts have said is, county, you can do whatever you want, but you can't unilaterally affect what the city has authority to do in the 3-mile area. If you can't agree, then there's a mechanism in the statute to force a combined planning department.
So is it accurate to say that the only way that Shawnee County citizens who, in a commission, we would have any influence over this boundary would be by putting back together a joint planning department?
That would probably be one of the best way to do it. So.
And I remember when we had the discussion on the code and we were talking about maybe exploring an interlocal agreement, this might be another reason why we would want to have that further discussion between the city and the county as to whether or not there's a possibility for a joint planning. So, thank you, Commissioners.
Follow-up question then. Jonathan, when we did the original paperwork, the original contract in '94, you said,
Yes.
Did the county agree then at that time that the city would have management of that? I mean, did we enter into, I mean, did we basically at that point say,
Yeah, the agreement actually says, I don't know the exact language, I don't have it in front of me, but it says something to the effect of, city will allow people in this area to connect subject to city regulations and ordinances, and that's what we're dealing with as a city ordinance.
Okay.
So,
okay.
Of course.
Sorry to butt in, but I just want to make sure everyone's clear. I'm not an attorney. Tom Block, Shawnee County Public Works. But in that agreement that we're referring to, there's two paragraphs. One is paragraph 3. It says system connection. The city will allow the system to discharge wastewater to the Half-Day Creek Interceptor Sewer through Shawnee County main lateral sewer districts 4, 15, 17, and 31. City shall then maintain the system under the law, city ordinance, yada, yada, yada. And then paragraph 4 says additional connections, any sewer connections to the Half-Day Creek other than Shawnee County main lateral districts 4, 15, 17, 31 shall require written consent of the city. This is within those districts. And the word says will.
Yeah.
So I guess, and I guess my concern, I hate to step in, but my concern is the amount of money that the county put into the system.
Yeah.
And in my personal opinion, again, not a legal opinion, is the city is unilaterally making up, not following this agreement. So anyway, that's just my opinion. I just had to say it since I talked about the city being able to do whatever they want. I don't think they can based on this agreement.
On the agreement. Thank you, Tom.
Commissioner Archer, if we
Yes.
could, if Mr. Warner with the city has any input. Oh. That was a declination.
Mr. Kaler.
Mr. Kalis, come
The
on.
health department on this. You
Okay.
asked that I do
We'll
my
come right on
research,
up.
and it kind of goes with what Tom had said.
Absolutely, come right on up.
Actually, Tom said most of the stuff I was going to say. Ed Kalis with the health department. Unfortunately, we were the ones to originally open up this can of worms. And in the process, I learned a lot about planning, zoning, public works, and things that are not typically related directly to environmental health, other than that they connect with that 200-foot rule. I did want to show you first a map of the area that we're talking about. This is the cross-hatched area are the sewer districts that are part of the Half-Day Creek and part of the contract that Tom had mentioned. You can see down here, there's pretty much, this is where the properties are that we're talking about. They're within Sewer District 4. So they are in that area. And then the contract that you had mentioned, or he had mentioned, I brought that with me, and I highlighted the areas that he had talked about. Before I get to that, one of the areas that I did want to show is one of the whereases, the reasons why they created this contract in the first place. Get it down a little bit less. Whereas the parties, basically the city and the county, recognize the public health benefits derived from public sewer systems. And that would have been one of the original rationales as to why this contract was created. And then here are the two sections that Tom had mentioned that are highlighted. It very specifically states that sewer districts 4, 15, 17, and 31 will be allowed to discharge sewage into the system. And then pretty much that's on that one is the issue. I have another document that I was provided by Tom's group, and basically it's a document back from 1977 that looks like it may have been the original establishment of the sewer district area. So the planning for this area looks like gone back 40 years. Oh, well, I'm sure there's a way to change it around, but
View.
Yeah,
You go to
go to view and
View.
do it
Okay.
clockwise.
Oh, there. I know this, but I'm a little nervous. Sorry. So this is, and I have not been able to review this, and I have not looked at a description of a piece of land like this, but this was what was in the file with the Half-Day Creek Interceptor. So they had planned that idea of having a sewer district back in 1977, and they apparently didn't do anything about it until the mid-90s. And then there are a variety of other things. My biggest concern is that it's disconcerting that 40 years of planning to put sewer into an area that has had sewer failures in different subdivisions before can be negated by basically a new policy from the city, which is, as far as I understand it, been adopted about 2 years ago. The reason that we brought it to the commission was we had never heard of the $4,000 assessment fee for the sewer district, and there was no way in the world we were going to decide that on our own. And fortunately, this is probably the last sewer district that we're going to have to worry about. But anything, if the policy that the city has is actually put into play, the 200-foot rule is moot. There's really no reason to have it, because most of our sewers that are existing, that would be within 200 feet of new development, are going to be in that 3-mile area. So that's something to consider, because we would have to use septic in those areas if you wanted it to develop. And that kind of contradicts the original purpose of this contract. So that's, if you have any questions.
Good morning, Commissioners. Barry Beagles, Shawnee County Planning Department. The Planning Department up to this point really has not had a bone in this dogfight. However, I did want to come back to a comment that you made, Commissioner Cook, and that is, well, how can Shawnee County be a player within the 3-mile area outside of recombining, the respective planning programs? Fortunately, we have a process that we are undertaking right now known as the Comprehensive Plan for Shawnee County. And its virtue is the fact that we are giving a voice to the residents of the unincorporated area and embracing their comments, their visions, their aspirations, their desires, and that would be formulated in this long-range planning document called the Comprehensive Plan. It is through this document that hopefully we can come to terms, and we've already started discussions with Dan and Bill, with regard to what is the best approach in dealing with the 3-mile extraterritorial jurisdiction. First and foremost, we want the city of Topeka to be successful. It is the economic engine that drives, Topeka and Shawnee County. It's our cultural and resource center. And so what is it that we can do to be responsible stewards for the balance of the unincorporated area? Well, we recognize that the city has a planned growth area called the urban growth area immediately outside of the city limits. They anticipate by the year 2040 that they will capture 11,000 new residents, both within the city of Topeka through infill development, rehabilitation, and redevelopment, as well as expansion into the urban growth area commensurate with the extension, affordable extension of urban utilities. And Dan, if I'm mischaracterizing anything, I know you'll come up and correct me. So, that being said, we've had discussions with the city of Topeka about the 3-mile extraterritorial jurisdiction outside of the urban growth area. And what does responsible development within that area look like? Well, right now, as indicated by Mr. Brazon, is that the city does exercise a 3-mile extraterritorial jurisdiction for subdivision, land division activities. It does not control building permits. It does not control zoning. So what are the opportunities that are presented to us through this comprehensive planning process where possibly Shawnee County, in representation of the interests of Shawnee County residents and the city of Topeka, how can we work together so that way we're achieving mutual goals? Well, right now, through the plat exemption process that is available within the 3-mile area outside of the urban growth area, there still remains a 3-acre plat exemption, now with 300-foot frontage and a lot depth to width ratio. And as long as you meet those 3 criteria, then you can subdivide land without any other constraints associated with that land division. Well, in the 50 years from 1960 to 2010, Shawnee County grew by 36,600 people. 8,000 of that was captured within the city of Topeka. 26,000 occurred within the unincorporated area. We have an unincorporated population now of 46,000. That would be equivalent to the 11th largest city in the state of Kansas, but we are not a municipal service provider. So what does responsible development look like when we come and talk about the 3-mile limit? I think that there is a way that mutually between the city of Topeka and Shawnee County we can define what the expectations are going to be, that we can look at new growth and development in a responsible fashion that plans ahead for infrastructure, plans ahead for utilities, plans ahead for streets, street rights-of-way, utility easements, looks at drainage patterns in a broader, comprehensive sense than dealing with it one lot at a time through plat exemption. And that's what we are hoping to achieve. And like I say, we're having those ongoing discussions now between 3-acre plat exemption to something different like planned residential subdivisions within the 3-mile area, which I understand the city of Topeka does not want to urbanize beyond the urban growth area. But what is that middle point then that we can hopefully come to a consensus with regard to what that responsible development pattern would be? And that is us stepping up to do our part to represent the interests of the citizens of unincorporated Shawnee County through this comprehensive planning process. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out, is that, you know, we're you know, the only alternative, with all due respect, is not necessarily just the recombination of the planning programs. We can still have a seat at the table with regard to negotiations with the city and what we come up with in terms of a joint policy, particularly as it relates to the 3-mile extraterritorial jurisdiction.
Commissioner
And-
I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, and how does that help us make a decision today, a decision that's going to set a precedent as we move forward in development?
Well, you know, I don't know.
I mean, it's nice, I'm glad we're talking to the city, I'm glad we're all involved, but how does that help us today?
Well,
make a
I would
decision
hope
regarding
that,
this variance.
Yeah, and I appreciate the question.
Okay.
I wish that this issue came up in August as opposed to now, because by August, hopefully, with the County Commission's consideration, we would have an adopted comprehensive plan. But beyond that, there is still the implementation of the plan through new rules and regulations that would then enforce the recommendations of the comprehensive plan. There is no policy in effect at all in the unincorporated area that would help us deal with this situation today. There is none. And so what we are trying to do is to come up with that game plan, known as the long-range plan, in this policy document. This, like I said, we have not finalized what the recommendation is as it relates to the 3-mile area outside of the urban growth area. So I don't have a direct answer for you, but that's one of the purposes of this comprehensive planning process.
Commissioner. But isn't the precedent we're setting today, by if we were to allow the septic systems to be put in, that the message from the city is we want to put all brakes on any development outside of the city limits. We do not want any development, any subdivisions outside of the city limits. We want all development to occur only within the boundaries of the city of Topeka. And if we have any development, we want you to have septic systems, which we have public health concerns with. We have a history with failure with.
Right.
And so we want to have you to have inferior systems as a further way to put brakes, and it's the city controlling all growth so that it does not occur outside of the actual city of Topeka.
Well, and right now, through the city's subdivision regulations, which has effect in the 3-mile area, it does not stop development within the 3-mile area. It may not be in the form of subdivision in terms of urban density, but through the 3-acre plat exemption, it's still perpetuating, which is the path of least resistance to convert land into residential development. You just strip it out along a township or county roadway, and now you've created effectively a subdivision, but you're utilizing a section line road to create that subdivision. So the city's regulations today do not prevent future opportunity for growth and development. It's just that it's an inefficient manner to grow and develop in the 3-mile area outside of the urban growth area. And that's where we're trying to come to terms and say, okay, what can we do to work together to define what is responsible development within the 3-mile area? We haven't been able to define that yet, but we're hoping before the conclusion of this document and with the recommendation of the steering committee that's overseeing this and the planning commission, we will have some solid answer for you in terms of a policy as it relates to the 3-mile area.
Thanks. Thanks, Barry. Commissioner?
Yes,
I
Commissioner.
don't have a question for you, but going back to Jonathan on the original contract, have we had discussions with the legal department at the city as to our concerns then that this contract isn't allowing?
Well, I think that was,
I know I see reference to the planning department, but have you had any discussions with?
No, and I think that would be up to the landowner if they wanted to force that at this point, something with the city through that contract. But what I would point out is that in 1998, when the commission adopted the 200-foot rule, the commission chose to use the words "or local regulation." It doesn't say "or Shawnee County regulation." The local regulation that's in effect in this case is the city ordinance, which they have authority to adopt by virtue of their subdivision regulation authority, their ETJ authority, and the contract itself from 1998, which says we will operate and maintain the system in accordance with city ordinances and regulations. So I think that was probably why the word local regulation was used, is that we recognize, or the commission at the time in 98, or yes, 98, recognized that there might be local regulations that would affect hooking up to the sewer.
Doesn't make it any clearer, does it?
So the question,
Yeah.
well, the question is, yes, sir.
Well, I'm just of the party involved here. Kind of.
Well, no, come on up.
Discussion between the city and the county. It's not a.
Come right on up. We've heard from you before. Please come up.
Yeah, it's not a comfy feeling. I'm not familiar with everything that's going on or being discussed here. The first thing that the commissioners told to me, that Dad should have got everything in writing. And unfortunately, he didn't. He was terminal with leukemia, and the people told him that if he didn't sign it, they would take him to court, and they also told him it wouldn't interfere. On the application that we filed, it says there are two reasons for granting a variance, and one is if there's an engineering difficulty, which there is, and which we documented when we were here before, that they would have to in order to hook to the interceptor, they would have to tunnel under Half-Day Creek. Certainly an engineering problem, and that was listed on the application that we filed for a variance. It was given two reasons, and the second was a financial. Now, they gave Dad $5,000 to go across there. If you add up the $62,000 for the south lot, the $43,000 for the next lot, the $39,000 for one of Ken's lots, you come up with $180,000. Now, I know the county needs $180,000, but when they gave Dad the $5,000, they saw this coming. The regulations were already in place. They knew that he was going to be charged back, and it just seems inappropriate, and it also seems to me to meet the requirement. While I was sitting here, I heard a lot of talk about growth, and of the city growth, and of the county growth. And my grandfather herded sheep to buy that land for $5 an acre. And so we have seen the county and the city grow up together. I would hope they'd be better friends. But the land in question, we had Schmidt Engineering come out. And number one, it's on a very steep hill, at the crest of a very steep hill, and it's going down. And number two, Half-Day Creek goes right through it. Now, on the north of the two lots, there is only one small location that a house can be built because of the limitations, and this is the engineering firm telling us this, because of the sewer interceptor and the Half-Day Creek. And so whomever we would hope to sell that to, because we're still trying to settle the estate, there is just one tiny place the driveway can go through and one tiny place the house can be built. So there's certainly not much evidence that either of those properties could ever be considered for growth, because you can only put one house on each 5-acre lot. And we couldn't plat, or we couldn't build more than one house, and we have the evidence from Schmidt Engineering. We hired them to come out and see what could be done there. And it's very limited. It's one house on each of the 4 5-acre lots. So when I hear people talking about county growth, and plus the paper that we filed that was given us by the county that said there's 2 reasons. There are definite engineering reasons, and there are very definite and clear financial reasons. And we just feel helpless because that's what we were told coming into this, and in writing. It's right on whatever we had to fill out, the paper we had to fill out to come before the county commissioners. It says right on there, there's 2 reasons. and we meet both criteria. And I just feel like the little guy, you know, wondering which elephant's going to step on you next. So, anything else I can offer?
Oh,
Questions?
No.
no, thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner, I'll
Yeah.
make a motion to grant the variance, and I think the basis is that the city has told us this is the way it's going to be. And so it's been taken out of the hands of the county and placed in the hands of the city as to how we grant variances on this request.
I'm not going to second that motion because I think you're talking about the health and welfare of our community and a serious precedent that's going to be set, and you're talking about millions of dollars of investment that we made. So I can't support this. I would like for the legal staff to talk to the city legal staff and, if necessary, take it to court and let's figure out what's going on. That would be my view. Commissioner
That's
Bueller?
my preference. I think.
This is just too important.
It is very important, and I think, you know, our cities are within the county. Our cities are just as important. I mean, as, you know, the economic engine of this community, we have to figure out a better way to plan, to grow, than what we've done in the last several years. But I do think this is really important.
Yeah.
I would feel better, with all due respect to Mr. White, to slow down a little bit and
Yeah.
to make sure that we're not doing some harm here, some long-term harm.
Okay. Yeah, this is a tough one.
It is.
It is very, very, very difficult situation and decision.
So my motion would die for a lack of a second, I hear.
Or you don't hear.
Or I don't hear.
Technically. Yeah, I will make a motion that we defer consideration of this item until Mr. Brazan has an opportunity to talk to City Council and report back to us. But this is not an easy decision, and if we have to take it to court, waiting for our comprehensive plan to better know where we're going in the future, then that's what it's going to be. But that would be my motion, to defer until a time in the future that you've had an opportunity to review.
Just so I'm clear, the other issue that Mr. White brought up was the economic and physical barrier variance. We didn't get into that because we thought the city regulation was pretty much controlling here.
Okay.
So are you saying that the physical barrier and economic grounds for the variance aren't going to be considered?
I'd like a comprehensive look
Okay.
at this, knowing, you know, this is going to set precedent, and it's about the health and welfare of our community.
Okay.
So and I would talk to Mr. Beagle, I would talk to Ed Cale, I would talk to everybody that is discussing this item.
Okay.
And I'll second your motion. I agree, because we were just looking at the local regulations for this. I would like all that information, the economic, the engineering pieces
Right.
of it too, in front of me, so that make
Yes.
sure that I'm
Yes,
making
thank
an
you.
One of the
informed
things that
decision.
one of the things that we did talk about when we were discussing the economic, there's really no test for that. Different counties have different amount of feet that they make you connect to a sewer system. And what our thinking was on that is that maybe the applicant needs to come forward with a estimate of, since we require people to connect up to 200 feet, maybe come forward with some estimates to show the cost of what he's being faced with versus the cost of what a 200-foot sewer line in that location would cost. Is that something that
We already did that.
you estimated a sewer line 200 feet long
Engineer to estimate the comparative cost of the sewer line we submitted at the last meeting.
with a septic system?
With the septic
Yes.
system, it's $182,000. With the city's plan, with the county's plan, and it's $14,000 times 4, the $56,000. So it's a difference of $130,000 between the two plans.
And if you would provide that information, sir, it would.
We did last time.
That's comparing the sewer connection to a septic connection. What I'm talking about is a sewer connection to a septic connection 200 feet long, because that's the standard that the commissioners thought was a reasonable amount of sewer line.
I think we did that.
Thank you for your patience, everyone. Yes, Commissioner Cook.
I just want to make sure we put clear that my motion was more out of frustration with the city, apparently
sense
telling
that.
the
I
county
can sense that.
how they're going to make decisions, not out of an acceptance of the, or an approval of the city telling the county how to do business.
And I appreciate that, Commissioner. I respect that. If we make decisions running out of patience with the city of Topeka, we're going to be sitting here undecisive for a long time.
And I agree with Commissioner Bueller that the best way to resolve this is by better planning between
Yeah.
the two entities.
Exactly. Or would you go along with our?
I'm going along with the deferral.
Okay.
Because I think that there's no harm in trying to resolve the differences between the, anytime you can bring everybody to the table to come up with a collective decision, I'm in favor of that.
Absolutely. Okay. Motion made by Commissioner Archer, seconded by Commissioner Bueller. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries 3-0. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you all for your hard work. Next item, please.
Consent agenda.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion made to approve the consent agenda by Commissioner Bueller, seconded by Commissioner Cook. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries 3-0. Next item, please.
New business A, County Clerk. Number 1, consider all voucher payments.
Commissioners, this morning we have vouchers that total $315,165.28. The highlights out of the voucher report are the holding account with the state of Kansas, which is the motor vehicle fund, of $101,279.97. Solid waste has $58,474.15. Parks and Recreation with $49,242.45. Department of Corrections with $23,243.83. And our Shawnee County Sheriff with $22,227.47. I would move for approval of the vouchers as presented.
Second.
Motion made to approve the vouchers by Commissioner Cook, seconded by Commissioner Bueller. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries 3-0. Next item, please.
Number 2, consider correction orders.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion made to approve the correction orders by Commissioner Bueller, seconded by Commissioner Cook. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries 3-0. Next item, please.
Item B, Parks and Recreation. Number 1, consider approval to award bid to Adware and Specialty of Texas, Inc. for apparel related to sports leagues, associations, clubs, and seasonal department T-shirts, and authorization and execution of contract C-168, 2017 for same.
Good morning, Commissioners. John Knight, Parks and Recreation. If you recall, early each year, we asked for permission to go out for bids for these type of things. The bids that came back, the lowest, most responsive bid was this Adware company. These are the shirts you see on all of our staff working. These are the ones that we give away in our youth sports programs for the different teams, all of those type of things, and all those costs are factored into when we establish our fees, those type of things to recover those costs. Be happy to answer any other questions you may have.
Very good. I'll make a motion to approve the contract.
A second.
Motion made to approve by Commissioner Archer, seconded by Commissioner Bueller. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries 3-0. Thank you, John. Next
Thank you,
item,
Commissioners.
please.
Item C, Health Department. Number 1, consider authorization and execution of contract C-169, 2017 with Grace Med to provide oral health services to Health Department WIC clients.
Good morning, Commissioners. Linda Oaks from the Health Department. This agreement we have before you today would allow Grace Med to have a dental hygienist come and provide services to our WIC children. We know that those baby teeth are very important in development. We want to keep them healthy, and there is a high need, especially in low-income folks, for this kind of service. She would be doing fluoride varnishes as well as doing a quick exam and referring any parents to a dentist for other needed, more serious problems. So we think that we could help prevent some problems for these children in the future. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
I'll move for approval.
I'll second.
Yeah, this is nice for Grace Med to be such a community partner with us. thankful to them. Motion made to approve by Commissioner Cook, seconded by Commissioner Bueller. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries 3-0. Thank you, Linda. Next item,
Thank you,
please.
Commissioners.
Item D, Commission, number 1, consider approval of resolution number 2017-24 regarding appointment of Linda Oakes as the interim Health Department Director and approval to advertise the permanent position.
Commissioner?
With Allison's departure, I think her last day is tomorrow. It would be my intent to support this resolution to appoint Linda as the interim Health Department Director.
Okay.
And I would gladly second it.
Yeah, and I will gladly vote for it, and thank you for agreeing to accept the assignment. It's very important. Motion made to adopt the resolution by Commissioner Bueller, seconded by Commissioner Cook. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries 3-0. Next item, please.
Administrative Communications.
Administrative Communications.
Good morning, Commissioners. Randy Luby with Parks and Recreation. I was down on Monday and announced a press conference for this afternoon for a Blue Chip Award presented by Blue Cross and Blue Shield. Unfortunately, one of the presenters had a family emergency, so we are going to postpone that, and we will be back when we decide a date that works out well for everybody. So just announcing that that will be postponed this afternoon.
We still won the award, though.
We still won the award.
All right.
Actually, it's sitting in John's office, so thank you.
Thank you, Randy.
Good morning, Commissioners. Hans Niska, Kansas Expo Center. Just have a few announcements to make. Obviously, first and foremost, today we have our first third Thursday of the year with a 30th anniversary celebratory ribbon cutting, so that should be exciting, and hopefully the weather looks like it's going to be nice for it. So everyone's welcome to come on out this afternoon for that. And then we also have a busy weekend with the carnival starting and the graduations and a horse event, the Buckskin Show, all sharing our venue at the same time. So it's going to be very busy Saturday and Sunday. Parking is going to be limited, so I want to remind everybody again, communications have been going out through the schools, but to remind anybody that doesn't know to please carpool. Parking is going to be very limited, and so make the proper time adjustments and preparations for that. So, thank you.
Thank you, Hans.
The event today is at 3:30, is that correct?
3:30 or 4. I think it's
3:30. Okay.
4.
It's 4.
Oh, okay. I had 3:30 down. Okay.
You'll be there early.
Yes.
Good morning, Commissioners. Larry Moss, Shawnee County Treasurer. I have a couple of minor motor vehicle items. As you know, over the last 2 years, we have partnered with Rossville to provide service for motor vehicle registration at the Rossville City Hall on Mondays from 8 till noon. I want to take this opportunity to thank Rossville, the city of Rossville. That's a great example of one of our cities working with the county to provide good customer service to the county residents. Having said that, we're going to make a change with that service. We're going to continue the service through May on Mondays. Of course, on May 29th, which is a holiday, there will be no service. But beginning on June the 7th, which is a Wednesday, we're going to change the service date to Wednesdays. This works better with resource allocation. So we're going to try Wednesdays from 8 till noon, starting on the 7th of June. And we'll do some more announcing of that just to get the word out. The other item I have, one of the convenient ways to renew your tags is through the web tags, through online. And I certainly encourage everyone to do that. But I also want to caution the public. There is a scam out there where if you're not careful the way you type in that address, you can be redirected to a scam site. And the first clue will be that they will ask for an additional charge. Well, actually, the first clue is when they ask what state you're in, and then your gender, and then they will start, they'll tell you that there's going to be an additional charge. I want to emphasize there is no additional charge other than the banking fee if you use your credit card. So if you
If you see those additional charges, get off the site. Do not give them your credit card information, because you not only are going to get charged, you have given them your personal information. So just a caution to the public. I don't think it is widespread, but I do have personal knowledge of where this has happened in Shawnee County recently, and I want to bring that attention to the attention of the public. So be very careful how you type that in, and pay attention that you are not redirected to another site. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Larry. That is good information for the public.
Hello, Carol Marple, Shawnee County. I had a couple of questions. The first one being, are we still on track with the Rossville, or the Willard Bridge, to close it around the 1st of June?
We have our Public Works Director here. Tom, you? That's okay. No. Was there something else, Carol, before we?
Well, I wanted to ask, if we are going to close it, if it's going to be closed 1st of June around, shouldn't we be getting some signage up to that effect?
Okay.
Yes, we have that planned to have message boards up 2 weeks prior. We have thought that through, and we will have those.
Thank you, Tom. Something else,
Okay.
Carol?
Yes, yes. I want to make some comments about some things that I've been hearing throughout the county. It is about the noxious weed department. And I wrote this down so I could make sure I said everything that I thought. I am really at a loss to understand why the county commission is so determined to minimize the noxious weed department. We're not talking about taking care of a park, a golf course, or a lawn. As farmers, we contend almost on a daily basis with noxious weeds, be it in our crops, which they can severely limit our yields, and with the low prices today, the thing that we can do best is to get the best yields and control the weeds. Managing weeds is one of the few things that we can do, since we can't control the price or the weather. Cattle do not eat weeds. We have two major options for controlling weeds in the pasture: controlled burns, which is becoming harder to do because of the increasing population in the county, or spraying. We want our county to thrive. We have approximately 58,000 parcels of land in Shawnee County. I would guess that less than 10% of these are farmers. One of the American dreams is to own a house in the country with a small acreage. I hope that people are able to realize that dream, but with that goal comes a responsibility of controlling the weeds on their 5, 10, 20, or 40 acre tracts of land. Because, believe me, their weeds will find a way to invade the farmer's pasture, crops, or our road ditches. The Noxious Weed Department provides an invaluable service to the residents of this county. Our county already doesn't present well because of the lack of code control in the city. Think how horrible it would look if the land is filled only with weeds. The Noxious Weed Department, with a very knowledgeable staff that is there, is a place where people can go and get help with weed control, tank mix recipes. They'll even help you figure a recipe for a 1-gallon sprayer tank, buy chemicals, or rent and pull behind sprayers. The sole focus there is to help with weed control. It is not cost-effective for the person that owns a small number of acres to own and maintain a pull-behind sprayer, but they usually do have a small utility tractor. The staff of the weed department can get them lined out with what and how they need to spray. Let's not forget the townships, watershed districts, even the KDOT roads that the Noxious Weed Department staff spray for. They do not have the funding available to hire and train staff to take care of this, since it's seasonal. Nor can they afford to buy and maintain the equipment to spray better. It is a much better business decision to contract with the noxious weed department to do this job, and the townships then can concentrate on maintaining the roads. They are also hiring the noxious weed department because of their knowledge of the county. They know where the severe weed infestations are, they know where the grapevines are located, etc. I don't want to say how old I am, but I don't ever remember there being any legal problems with the spraying of weeds that have been done by the weed department. We all know if you spray a weed today, that tomorrow you can go back and there'll be probably 3 more in the same spot. I would imagine that is why the noxious weed law came into being. Who is going to be responsible for all the paperwork required by this law? Until I looked over the law, I had no idea the amount of information the noxious weed department was responsible for reporting. Who's going to be responsible for seeing that Shawnee County stays in compliance with the noxious weed law? I ask the question again, why is the county commission so determined to limit a department that provides such a valuable service to the residents of our county? I recently attended a JADO meeting, as did each of you, and we all heard about the wonderful changes that are becoming to our county. I'm going to ask you, how are these changes and the jobs that they create going to help us if we change the weed department and that affects the appearance of our county to the extent that those new people choose not to live within our county, but to work here? That is my comments.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else for administrative communications?
Ed Kalis with the Health Department. I just want to let you know next Friday will be our first dump day for our mosquito control campaign. I had mentioned on Monday that we were going to start trapping this week, and there was an issue with the delivery of the traps, so we will begin that next week.
Okay. Thank you, Ed. Anyone else?
Tom Block with Public Works, as always. Just want to clarify a little bit from the discussion that was just held. The tentative date for the closure of the bridge right now is June 12th. So I'm not sure where June 1st date is coming from, but it's if people want to know, we are more than welcome, or we'll welcome any email or communication to call us that deal with the project on a day-to-day basis to provide them accurate information. But June 12th right now is the date that's tentatively set to close the road and begin the construction of the Carlson Road section.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, Commissioner, I think we had those discussions way back in November or December. So again, the project manager, Tom Flanagan and Tom Block are on this, and those in the area are aware that it's going to need to be closed for at least 90 days. That's according to the contract, unless I'm corrected. But
yes, no, not at least 90 days. No more than 90 days.
Thank you.
More than 90.
There we go.
Okay.
There we
Very
go.
good.
And again, that's to tie in the bridge
Right.
with the road. So, yeah.
And I'm sure it's discussed at the coffee shop
It
in
is
Moynihan.
on a daily basis.
Very good.
Yeah.
Anyone else for administrative communications? Commissioner Bueller, anything to add?
Well, I wanted to, first of all, point out, we now have Mary Thomas's picture up on the wall as a past commissioner.
Oh, yes.
I wanted to point that out. We've been waiting for that, haven't we, Jane? But I also want to point out Mary Bogart is, she's one of the, I think she's the first female commissioner. I received an email from her on all this discussion about the Expo Center in 30 years, and you know, that they were even having conversations about the Expo Center back when she was a commissioner, and so it proves how long you have discussions, how important it is for planning, and that she was instrumental in that as well. So just wanted to point that out.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Commissioner Cook?
No, nothing today.
Me either. Next item, please.
Executive session?
There's not a need, so we're officially adjourned. Thank you for coming.